Setting up Windows 11 for privacy. Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for askleo.com. Both Windows 10 and Windows 11 have come under fire for various privacy issues. Depending on what you read and what's been uncovered and what you believe, it does appear that not all privacy-related issues are necessarily under your control. However, much of it is, and much of it begins when you install or update Windows. So, what I'm going to do is install Windows and show you what kinds of things you can control along the way. So I've started the setup process by booting from a Windows 11 installation media. The first few things, of course, are pretty routine, like your language, your keyboard, and what it is you want to do. And indeed, I agree that everything will be deleted. We're going to install Windows 11. I don't have a product key. I'm not going to worry about that for this one. And it takes a few seconds to get a couple things ready for me. We're setting up Windows 11 Home. This is where it begins. One of the first and most frustrating aspects these days is the Windows 11 Terms of Service. It's lengthy and it's full of legalese, and we blindly accept it because, honestly, we have to in order to use Windows at all. One of those common complaints I get is, I never said Microsoft could do that, when in fact, you absolutely did tell Microsoft it could do that, whatever that is, by clicking the Accept button on the Terms of Service screen. There's really nothing you can control here other than to decline and avoid installing Windows completely. It's all or nothing. Now, if this is of concern, I actually recommend you find the documents online. We'll have links down below in the comments or in the associated article for this video. But you can see both the Microsoft Privacy Statement and the Microsoft Services Agreements. Again, they're both lengthy legalese. However, one of the things that's become kind of handy in recent years is you can take those documents, copy-paste the entire document into an AI chatbot, and start asking questions. For example, you might ask, does this agreement mean that Microsoft owns my files? No, it doesn't, but that's not the point here. You can ask similar questions that are of concern to you. Another good request might simply be to say, summarize the major privacy implications. Again, it's all or nothing, but at least with this technique, you might get a better understanding of exactly what it is you've agreed to. So, we will start installing the operating system by accepting the terms of service. All right, after a very lengthy setup process, we finally land on this screen, which is requesting that you sign in to a Microsoft account. Now, of course, one approach to increasing your privacy is not to sign in with a Microsoft account at all, using a local account instead. Unfortunately, in Windows 11, Microsoft has made this very difficult, and the workarounds for the process are essentially constantly being thwarted. As I record this, though, there are two approaches that appear to continue to work. In my article, and video, Set up Windows 11 with only a local account, still working in 2026. This approach uses the Windows command prompt during the setup process to disable the network, which then in turn enables local account creation. The other approach, still another way to install Windows 11 with only a local account, involves first installing Windows 10 with only a local account, which is actually fairly easy, and then upgrading to Windows 11, which then preserves that account. For this video, though, I'm going to carry on with Microsoft's preferred, almost forced approach using a Microsoft account. Now, there's something interesting about this. I'm going to click on Sign In, and we get to choose an email address. I'm actually not going to use a Microsoft email address. Instead, my askleotest@gmail.com address. Now, this can be confusing. Every Microsoft email address, hotmail.com, live.com, outlook.com, and so forth, these are all, by definition, Microsoft accounts. But you can use a non-Microsoft email address as your Microsoft account for doing things like signing into your PC. This doesn't dramatically alter Windows' own privacy settings. Instead, it just removes Microsoft's own email services from the equation. So I'm going to use this Microsoft account, which happens to be a Google account, as my sign-in on this machine. You may be required to set up a PIN, or you may simply be asked if you want to set up a PIN. I generally recommend using one because it is typically much easier to sign in with, and honestly, it's just as secure. So we'll go ahead and create PIN. And then you're going to be presented with a screen full of privacy options. Now, there are a couple of things to note about this screen. One is you're not seeing the whole thing. If you mouse over the options, you'll see that a scroll bar appears, and there's actually a number of items here. The good news here is that Microsoft's honestly not trying to hide what's on the screen. If you do one at a time, you'll notice that when we started it, there was a next button here that became accept once we had seen everything that was in the list. Now, the list itself is interesting. I want to go through each one and make a suggestion. Location often enables additional features and functionality in the apps and websites that request it. You could later control whether this information is shared with specific apps or specific websites as you visit or use them. Now, on the other hand, if this is something that you're particularly concerned about, perhaps you'll feel more comfortable not accepting it and living with that resulting loss of features. I'm going to leave that as a yes. Find My Device, I recommend you also turn on, particularly if your device is portable and you've already got location stuff turned on. Diagnostic data. I recommend yes. Windows is going to collect information about the websites you browse and how you use the apps and features. Microsoft claims that this data is anonymized and collected in a non-personally identifiable way. I believe that this information is used for future product enhancements. Of course, if you don't trust Microsoft, then this would be one to turn off. If you say no, you'll be presented with an item to send required diagnostic data, which I believe is required, and use when programs fail or crash. Inking and typing. This is one, honestly, I recommend you turn off. You say no. You may not want what you've typed or written to be sent to Microsoft. Presumably, this could also eat up additional bandwidth. Since this appears to really only be used for future product improvement, I'm not seeing a whole lot of benefit for you to turn it on. And then lastly, personalized offers. Yeah, no. Honestly, while they may make tips more personalized, I think most people read this as give me more targeted advertisements. It's not going to affect how you use Windows. And also, I tend to be generally anti-tip myself. I turn them off, and I don't find them particularly useful. And I think we're all tired of targeted advertising. Like I said earlier, once you scroll to the end of the list at least once, that next button is going to change to an accept button. So after you've made what other selections you want to make, and like I said, I'm turning off inking and typing and personalized offers, then I'm going to click on accept. Now, at some point, Setup is going to offer to restore quote unquote familiar settings, I guess, from another machine already associated with your Microsoft account. I'm going to click on More Options because not only is it going to show me additional machines that I can choose from, but it gives me the option to set up as a new PC. I strongly recommend you set up as a new PC every time and not make assumptions about whatever is going to be restored from one of these prior machines. Now, if you do select Setup as a new PC, which again, I recommend, it's going to basically try to convince you that you really want to do it anyway. You'll notice that there are things like have easy access to your file, restore your favorite apps, use your new PC with familiar settings already in place, and of course, using your Windows and Edge passwords remembered. Personally, I read easy access to your files as enabling OneDrive and possibly its backup, which is to be avoided at nearly all costs. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. It's also really unclear what Microsoft considers to be my favorite apps. I'm going to recommend that you always choose setup as a new PC anyway and make explicit decisions for this specific PC as you go along. Now, setup progresses a little further and encourages you to customize your experience. Again, whatever the heck that means. I recommend skip. There's nothing here that can't be added or altered later. You'll be asked to link your phone. My personal experience with the phone link tool has been very, very shaky. It just hasn't worked very well for me. And as you can imagine, linking up your phone has a bunch of privacy implications. So again, I recommend skip here as well. Now, Microsoft continues hard to push Edge as your web browser. One way they do this is by importing information from other browsers you might have installed in an attempt, I guess, to make the switch more seamless. Once again, the privacy issue should be clear. One of the reasons I use other browsers is specifically to keep Edge and Microsoft out of the loop. So I strongly suggest not now. You might be offered a free trial of Microsoft 365. No, thank you. Again, you might be offered a free trial of Microsoft 365 Basic. Again, no thank you. Decline. Game Pass Premium, same thing. Unless you actually want it, I recommend against it. It's less about privacy on these last three items than it is about just accepting software that you didn't really ask for. What we're really focusing on here is Windows and things like Microsoft 365 and the game software. That's not it. There are always things that you can get and install and set up later. I do want to talk briefly about backing up in OneDrive. One of the things that did not happen in the setup process that we just used, which is done, by the way, we've got a working system. There was no mention of OneDrive. The issue is that it may show up in other installations. The same process may include it if you're doing something different than I did, I guess. You might get pestered at a later time. I should say you probably will get pestered at a later time. Or if you choose to enable OneDrive by running it and signing into your account. Do not enable backup, even if OneDrive is not mentioned. Opt out. Again, even if pestered to do otherwise, and you will be pestered. Now, backing up is a great thing. I recommend it often. I talk about it all the time. The problem here is that the backup feature that is offered here in this scenario is the disastrous OneDrive backup feature. I'll have links to the article and the video that talk about exactly why it is such a disaster. But in a nutshell, the privacy implications are massive. Files in your Documents folder will get uploaded to OneDrive whether or not you realize it. If you have multiple machines using the same OneDrive account, then documents and possibly other folders like your desktop might get merged and become visible on all of the other machines in that same account. Regardless of whether or not you consider exposing your documents to Microsoft to be an issue, which I don't, having them show up on other machines that perhaps others are using might be a big deal. And if your account is ever compromised, all of these backed up documents will be in the hands of the hacker. Backups? Yes, absolutely. The OneDrive backup feature? Absolutely not. I have a recommendation, again, links in the description or below, to what I recommend you do instead. The privacy issues around Windows are as important as they are murky. On one hand, many of these are issues that we regularly accept on other platforms with other companies and technologies without so much as a second thought. It's very possible, likely even, that the information collected here really is used only to improve your experience with Windows and to make it a better operating system for everyone. On the other hand, Windows 10 and now Windows 11, Microsoft seems to be taking information gathering to a new level that it's never before been seen in its flagship product. They are also perceived as being less than transparent about what's being collected, whether we opt out or not. Regardless of the outcome, it's important just to be aware of the choices that have been made available, even if they're not the default, and make our own decisions. For updates, for comments, for links related to this topic and more, visit askleo.com/193851. I'm Leo Notenboom, still not an AI, and this is askleo.com. Thanks for watching.